Yo, what is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So this morning, the Boston Bruins finally hired a head coach, and as a result, the 8 head coaching vacancies that we had coming into this offseason, as well as the 2 general manager vacancies, have been filled. So I thought that I'd do what I do best and grade some hirings based on how good I think that they are. Yeah, let's not waste any time. Yes, we may have a Peter DeBoer opening, a Dallas Stars opening come out relatively soon, but we're still not sure on that. So we're just going to go through these 10 at this point. And up first, Mike Sullivan to the New York Rangers. I'm giving it an A-. I'm getting the Rangers love out of the way first. When looking at them after they traded away Capo Caco, traded for JT Miller, it is very clear that the next 2 to 3 years is all Chris Drury really cares about, because if they don't make the playoffs next season, he's probably going to get fired, even though he did just get an extension. And there was no better option that was not going to be controversial, Joel Quenneville will talk about later, than Mike Sullivan, that could raise the floor of this team and get them back on track, because this was a team that won the President's Trophy, made the Eastern Conference Finals back in 2024. He obviously won the Stanley Cup twice with the Pittsburgh Penguins, and it wasn't even his fault why the wheels fell off the bus. It was more so just the natural order of aging, guys like Malkin and Letang falling off a decent amount. So yeah, I think especially with his performance at the Four Nations face-off in that first game, his defense was impeccable, his defensive scheme. I think he's going to improve this team next season, probably get them back into the playoffs. Even on that Pittsburgh team that was selling and trying to tank it up towards the end of the season, they were 20th in terms of expected goals percentage at 5-on-5. The Rangers were all the way down at 25th. So in terms of potentially unlocking somebody like Kreider and Zibanejad, who have been so bad at 5-on-5 of recent memory, I think he could potentially improve on that. I do feel bad for guys like Gabe Perreault, Brendan Othman, Will Cooley, and Lafreniere, because he, at this stage in his career, he probably doesn't care that much about developing. He just wants to win now. That's part of the reason why he left Pittsburgh. So yeah, the young guys might get screwed over, but for the New York Rangers, you really just got to care about the next 2 to 3 years, or like 4 to 5 years. Once Shesterkin and Fox kind of start to regress, this team, for the most part, is probably going to have to enter a rebuild again. So go for it with Mike Sullivan. I like this hiring. It gets an A- from me. Next up, basically, it was a coach swap. Sullivan, Pittsburgh to New York. Dan Muse from assistant head coach in New York to head coach in Pittsburgh. I'm going to go with the B+. He's basically like the opposite of Mike Sullivan. He is the ultimate developer, and that's what Pittsburgh needs right now. His coaching path, he's only 42 years old, but he's been coaching since he was like 24. He was a high school head coach, then went to Yale University, then went to the Chicago Steel, which are like the premier USHL team, then followed Laviolette to the Nashville Predators, then went to the U.S. National Team Development Program, where he was the head coach. You talk about top-tier development, that is the U.S. NTDP, and then he went back with Laviolette to the New York Rangers. So yeah, he is the ideal development guy for these Pittsburgh Penguins, for the next generation of guys like McGrody, Koivunen, Brunicki, Pickering, whoever they're going to take potentially at 11th and 12th overall, and next year when they get Gavin McKenna inevitably, you want a guy like Muse that is going to be willing to spend the time breaking down the basics at the NHL level for these guys. So I really like this hiring by Kyle Dubas. Only 42 years old. He's only 5 years older than Sidney Crosby, but they needed a big shakeup and kind of move off the idea of winning now, and I think Dan Muse is going to be very, very good at that. Is he going to be the coach in 7 years when they're coming out, or 5 years when they're coming out of the rebuild? I don't know, but I think he's going to provide valuable development over the next couple years. Next up, Lane Lambert to the Seattle Kraken. I'm going to go with the C+, a retread of a head coach, formerly coached my New York Islanders. And yeah, the Islanders were just pretty uninspiring. Granted, he didn't have the best roster, don't get me wrong, and I think he is going to be able to play more of an up-tempo, high-paced style of hockey, considering he doesn't have Lou Lamoriello constructing this roster where you kind of got to play a certain way if you want any semblance of success. His development, granted, again, in New York, he didn't really have that many guys to develop, or even in Toronto last year, but his development is really going to make or break him here. Can he get Beniers back on track? Can he get Shane Wright to take steps? Berkeley Cadden's potentially going to be at the NHL level probably 2 seasons from now, and Riker Evans as well taking steps, because the actual 25 to 35-year-olds on this team are not going to be able to get them into the playoffs, in my opinion, the next 2 seasons. So yeah, I haven't seen enough from Lambert, and he's not the most inspiring guy in terms of a leader of men in the Islanders special teams. I know that has a lot to do with the assistant coaches, but really fell off as soon as he got the head coaching job. It's even in 2022 when they missed the playoffs, they had the 4th best penalty kill and the 12th best power play. And then by this season, I know this was Patrick Watt, but like even the prior season, penalty kill was 2nd worst, power play was bottom 10 in the NHL. So he needs to prove on that. It's not a complete disaster of a hiring. I just think it's a bad fit and a bad situation in terms of the Seattle Kraken the next 2 seasons. Moving on, Marco Sturm, the most recently hired head coach. I'm going to go with a B+. He does have a pretty solid track record of developing. He was good for the German national team, won the silver medal back in 2018. I know NHLers don't play in that tournament, still very impressive for Germany. And then he's been in the LA Kings organization ever since, working with guys like Quinn Byfield, Brant Clark, Jordan Spence, Sean Dursey, Alex Turcotte. Started out as an assistant, then went down to the AHL, had a .630 points percentage the last 2 seasons, and especially this season after they lost Brant Clark, who was like the best offensive defenseman, arguably the best defenseman in the entire NHL, still highly productive. So yeah, I think for the Boston Bruins, he's going to bring in a style that's probably going to be more defensive, but I think for the Bruins roster right now, they do need to lean more so defensive because outside of Pasternak, they don't really have any offensive difference makers, but I think it's going to be pretty upbeat. If he can get Elias Lindholm back to playing very solid two-way, near Selke level defense, Hampus Lindholm coming back, he can get him back on track, and McAvoy coming off that injury, Matty Poitras, a guy that's lauded for his two-way game. I think Marco Sturm's a pretty good fit for the Boston Bruins, especially given his development chops that he showed. They're also, like Pittsburgh, they're not nuking it, but they have a retool coming up, or they're already in a retool, so they're going to need more of a developer. So I do like this first-time head coach that is a former player also of the Boston Bruins. That's always a plus. That shouldn't be why you hire a guy, but considering the fact that track record as a player, in track record as a coach, both check those boxes, in my opinion. B+ for Marco Sturm. Ken Holland to the LA Kings. I'm going to go with the C-. This guy has struggled mightily in the salary cap era. Yes, 2008. Yes, 2009. Those Detroit Red Wings teams were built already. Basically, for every great move that he has, like in Edmonton, the Ekholm trade and the Hyman signing, he has an equally horrendous one, like the Nurse extension or the Campbell signing. You look at him in terms of drafting and developing, basically since Jim Nill left him in 2013. In Detroit, he did get Larkin in 2014, but the wrong Svechnikov, Zadina, Cholowski, Rasmussen, and in Edmonton, he fumbled the drafting, or more so the developing, of some guys like Broberg and Holloway. So for LA, they're bringing him in to try to win, I guess, for the next 2 to 3 years. They're going nuclear. I don't know if that exactly would be my approach for LA, because I kind of like some of their young guys. Not saying I'd move off entirely of Kopitar and Doughty, but it's just scary. I'm afraid that he's just going to push it all in, and then when they still can't get over the Edmonton Oilers or Western Conference teams in 2 to 3 years, they're not going to have nearly enough to surround the next generation of LA Kings. It's a swing. He has experience, but again, recently that experience has not really been that encouraging basically for the last 12 years. So for the LA Kings, I'm going to go with the C-. Sticking in the LA greater area, Southern California, Joel Quenneville. You guys know my thoughts on Quenneville and Bowman getting jobs less than 5 years after the Kyle Beach incident became public. I'm not really going to touch on that. You can go watch the TikTok I made on that. In terms of just an on-ice hire, it is objectively a great hire. I'm going to give it an A when looking at Joel Quenneville. You hope that he learned from that experience and can only be better in terms of a player's coach and listening to his players. But yeah, his track record's fantastic. I can't lie. Got the job in Chicago for the 2008-2009 season when they were an 88-point team. First season, 104 points, make the Western Conference Finals. He didn't single-handedly make Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. They were already promising young guys and former top 3 picks, but did help develop them into absolute studs. Some guys that he did develop in great ways was Nick Hjalmarsson, Brandon Saad, Artemi Panarin was kind of a finished product by the time he came over to Russia, but very good in terms of there. And then he took the job in Florida, where he basically did the exact same thing to a degree. With Barkov and Huberdeau were already very good, but he instilled his culture. They went from being a team that only had 86 points to being a 93-point team. Then the COVID shutdown happened, 116-point pace during the COVID-shortened season, and then we're 7-0 before the Kyle Beach stuff came out, and he eventually had to step down or got fired, I forget. But yeah, he inherited another team that was solid, but definitely needed some better culture and overall better system. And immediately they turned into one of the best teams in the Eastern Conference and have been running the Eastern Conference for the last 3 years in terms of player development in Florida. Mackenzie Weegar, he really believed in, and now Mackenzie Weegar is a top 20 defenseman in the NHL still, as well as Gustav Forsling in that 2021 season after getting him off waivers. Played him a decent amount, helped develop him. Although I don't think that Anaheim, I love Leo Carlson. I think he's going to be a franchise center, but they don't have that potential second piece like a Toews, like a Huberdeau. There is a lot of pieces in Anaheim that you got to like, and I think under Quenneville, they're only going to improve, especially going from Cronin, who was the ultimate hard ass, to Quenneville, who still doesn't really put up with nonsense, but especially after what he's hopefully learned over the last 4 years, will be more of a player-friendly coach. They were god-awful at 5-on-5 last season, third worst 5-on-5 expected goals percentage. So I think guys like McTavish, Mitnikov, Zegras, Cutter Gauthier are all going to play far better under a guy like Joel Quenneville compared to Cronin, who is like the worst possible rebuilding coach. And it would not surprise me if the Anaheim Ducks are a high-level team. In 2 to 3 years, Rick Tocchet in Philadelphia. I'm going to go with a B. I don't quite think Tocchet is the level of coach that some people make him out to seem, especially when you see his track record. I'm not saying he was going to turn the 2007-2008 Tampa Bay Lightning or the Arizona Coyotes into cup contenders. But yeah, the 2024 season was awesome. You just need more of that. Hopefully he plays more of a fun, free-flowing game, which I think they will compared to Tortorella, where Matvei Michkov can develop a decent amount. Just play the young guys. Yes, it might be ugly the first season, but this is more of a retool, rebuild kind of situation compared to trying to win immediately. Just develop these first couple years, and I think Tocchet is definitely an improvement compared to Tortorella. Next up, we got Jeff Blashill for the Chicago Blackhawks. I'm going to go with a B-. I think people are a little bit too hard on him considering his Red Wings tenure. He inherited like a brutal situation. Yes, they were a playoff team in his first year, but they were going downhill. It was the end of the Holland tenure, and Yzerman came in and basically nuked it. Like no coach from 2019 to 2022 would have done much better of a job than him. You could criticize some of his development considering the fact that he didn't play guys like Zadina, Cholowski, Svechnikov, and Rasmussen and Veleno over some of the older guys that were on the team. Should have prioritized the youth, but I do kind of blame that on those guys just not really being that good of players. Holland kind of messing up those draft picks, then saying, oh, if they got more ice time, Zadina would have been an absolute stud right now. But yeah, he has been in Tampa Bay the last 3 seasons, learning from John Cooper, although that isn't the perfect development spot right now. They don't have any young guys really coming up within the system. Still, good to learn from him. So I think it's an okay hiring. He's definitely going to have a directive. He is not going to be able to play. He better not play Foligno, Dickinson, Donato, Teravainen, Bertuzzi, massive minutes, and then stuff Oliver Moore playing 11, 12 minutes a night. I think he's going to learn from his prior tenure and let the youth movement really begin for the Chicago Blackhawks. So yeah, B-, maybe a B, closer to a B than a C+. It got a little bit too much hate, but I can't say I love it. I'm not completely defending it. I'm going to go with a B-. Adam Foote, I'm going to go with a B- as well. When looking at him, longtime NHLer, very good defenseman. The track record in terms of coaching isn't quite there. He coached for 1.5 years for the Kelowna Rockets in the WHL. They had the 3rd lowest goals per game under him in the league. So that's not that too encouraging. He was the Vancouver assistant from 2023 to 2025, so 2 pretty lackluster seasons, and then the awesome 2024 season. In terms of just a coaching hire, I'd probably give this like a C+, but considering the fact that Quinn Hughes absolutely gushes about this guy, and for Vancouver, you're just begging that Quinn Hughes ends up staying, I got to say I do like it to a degree. I'm sure Foote is a very good defenseman-specific, defensive system-specific kind of coach. How will it translate to every single facet of the organization of the team? I'm a little bit skeptical on, but again, if it keeps Quinn Hughes happy, you can't say it's some kind of horrible coaching hire, considering if they brought somebody in that's maybe a better head coach, but Quinn Hughes doesn't quite love. Quinn Hughes has been out of here in a year, and then you got to completely blow it up or some shit like that. So I understand the logic here. Maybe not the best coach given his track record and what his one time being a head coach, the results that yielded there. But yeah, B- seems about fair. And then finally, we're finishing off with Matthew Dorsch. I'm going to go with an A-. I can't go with like an A or an A+. That would just be straight up biased. Considering this guy is an assistant general manager for the Islanders, they were scaring the shit out of me, thinking about hiring Holland, Bergevin, Kakalainen. I didn't want any of those guys. End up hiring Dorsch, who was the guy that clearly was next in line for a kind of job that didn't want to just reach out a guy like the LA Kings, considering the fact that he's been the assistant general manager from 2019 to 2025 for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Again, I'm not going to massively speculate and say, oh, all the good deals, that was Matthew Dorsch pushing JBB in that direction. All the bad deals, the Tanner Jeannot one, he was definitely against the Tanner Jeannot deal. I can't speculate like that, but he seems like, especially based off the press conference, a smart guy that is going to evaluate. I think he's probably going to evaluate the team for 1 year and then make serious changes, and especially something that I already know that he's going to do, considering he talked about it, revamp the AHL team. The Bridgeport Islanders have been, without a doubt, the worst AHL team of the 2020s. Their prospect development has been god-awful. He has continued to harp on that, and the Seattle Crunch have actually been a pretty good AHL team for a number of years. So I'm very confident in Matthew Dorsch. I think it's fair to give him an A-. Maybe I'm biased, but let me know in the comments, what do you think about these grades? Who would you move up? Who would you move down? Not who would you move up? Who would you move down? Who was I too harsh on? Who was I too light on? I'll be seeing you in the next one.